Hey, welcome back to episode 2, kicking off exactly where we finished before, not skipping out on you. I've adjusted to full screen now so I can pick up in-game sounds, but it's a little blurrier. I'm on a 27-inch screen. The resolution options aren't fantastic. I've gone with 1600 by 900, might try a few others. Goals are to smash through quests, which I remember being pretty slow, but I also had to Google hard to find guides back in the day. Poor UI forums displaying the quest lists. I even contributed to one forum for a crappy knight guide. Wrote it when I was a kid, Cetus as the author. I was like a 50 knight at the time. One thing I've noticed in KalOnline is the importance of picking up quests as soon as you see they're available. If you don't, you might end up doing a lot of unnecessary backtracking. Often, quests become available while you're already in your leveling zone, which means leaving the area to grab the quest and then returning to continue. It's a bit of a pain. It would be nice if quests were delivered more organically. Maybe a scout runs up to you on the battlefield to hand you the quest, acknowledging your role as the hero. Instead, running back and forth between NPCs feels outdated, especially since the game is selling level 60 characters now, so the whole time-gating design doesn't hold up anymore. That said, I did get lucky and found that some of the new quests aligned with the area I was already in, which made things easier. I got my first piece of gear drop, which was a nice surprise, a G16 Shaman mask. Pretty crazy that my first piece is grade 16. Not long after, I found a grade 13 weapon, which was awesome too. One thing I've noticed is that I seem to miss a lot, which is rare for Magic users in most games. But what I really love about older MMOs like this is that before they started selling skins for everything, the appearance of your gear was something you earned. It felt like an achievement. That difficulty and time-gated progression made obtaining gear so rewarding. It's why I take the time to inspect every piece of gear I find. It feels meaningful, not just another drop. I seem to be getting a ton of drops, gear for archers, magicians, knights, thieves, basically everything except for my own class. But that's fine as long as I can sell it to the shop. I did notice something odd though. Some of the swords couldn't be sold to the merchant or even the weapon merchant. I'm assuming they're unsellable because they're super low grade, and it's likely an oversight by the developers. That's how these older games handled issues like that. If anyone knows more about this, feel free to let me know in the comments. I also gained a few levels this session, which was awesome. And those quests I picked up earlier ended up overlapping perfectly with the walking routes to return completed quests, which saved me a lot of time. So I've picked Shaman as my class in KalOnline, and I'm completely stuck on what path to take. The descriptions for the job tree are full of lore, but they don't really explain much about how the class plays. Add to that the fact that I only speak English, and these names like Rising Shaman of God or Spirit Shaman of God don't give me much to go on. I'm gonna have to look this stuff up, but maybe someone out there knows the details and can help me figure it out. From what I can tell, the Shaman's got a mix of magic attacks, summons, and buffs, but I don't know which direction makes the most sense. Solo grinding is probably gonna be my main thing, so I need something that works for that, but I'm also open to group leveling when it's available. Always more fun to play with people. The paths break down like this. Unfamiliar Shaman is all about long-range magical attacks using divine power. Sounds decent, but is it good enough for solo? Or will it struggle against tougher enemies? Hereditary Shaman revolves around summoning ghosts to fight with you. It sounds useful, especially for area damage, but how good are the summons? Do they actually hold their own? Or am I going to be frustrated waiting for them to catch up? Exclusive Shaman taps into Soul's power for short bursts of strength and buffs for your party. That sounds like it could be great for group play, but is it viable for grinding solo when you're not leaning on teammates? Rising Shaman of God can summon Doggaby and ghosts while dealing big range damage. It's described as good for PV, which might make it the obvious solo pick, but I'm not sure how it stacks up against the others. Spirit Shaman of God focuses on buffs and AoE spells, supposedly better for PvP. But maybe those AoE spells could still work for PV grinding. I've got no idea if that's true or not. I'm stuck between picking something that sounds sick and something Googling for viability. Summons seem like they'd make solo play easier, but if they're weak, it might not be worth it. On the other hand, range damage and buffs sound solid, but will they be enough to handle the grind on my own? If you've played a Shaman recently, and know the differences between these paths, drop a comment or reach out. I need to figure out what's actually going to work before I lock in anything. As I grind through KalOnline in 2024, it's clear the game has evolved significantly. Recent updates have introduced new features and improvements that enhance the overall experience. The World Battle server is new since the last time I played, and it seems pretty serious. It's a dedicated place for large-scale PvP, so if you're into that kind of thing, it's probably worth checking out. From what I've gathered, you need to set up a secondary password to access it, which is a bit annoying but fair enough for security. What's interesting is that they've disabled things like the Cal shop while you're in there. So, it sounds like the fights are more about skill and preparation than just who spent more money. That's refreshing, honestly. I haven't tried it yet, but if the rewards are decent and the fights are balanced, it could be a fun break from grinding. The island of the battlefield has been tweaked a bit since I last played. It used to run for a full hour, which, let's be real, was overkill unless you were fully invested in it. Now it's down to 30 minutes, which makes it feel more manageable. They've also added some new drops, firmamental pillar items, from the monsters on the island. I'm not 100% sure what they're used for yet, but anything that adds a bit of extra incentive to join in is a good thing. I might jump in to see how it feels now. Shorter matches sound more my speed. The Infinite Tower was always one of those places I knew I should be grinding, but never got around to. Now, they've increased the number of times you can enter per day. You get 1 run for Zimogen and 2 for Jewel, which is nice if you're trying to stack up rewards or test your build against tougher enemies. It's still the same idea. Each floor gets harder, so you're trying to push as far as you can before you hit a wall. But with more chances to enter, it's less punishing if you mess up or want to try a different strategy. I'll probably give it a shot once I'm better geared. It seems like a good way to measure progress. The Cal Pass system is basically their take on a battle pass. You do daily and monthly missions, earn points, and unlock rewards as you go. It's a smart addition, I guess. Gives you a reason to log in consistently and gives structure to the grind. I've only done a couple of the daily missions so far. They're pretty standard stuff. Kill a set number of monsters, finish a dungeon, that kind of thing. The monthly ones are more long-term, so they'll probably take some commitment. I'm not sure how far I'll go with it yet, but it's something to keep in mind while I'm playing. These updates are interesting, but I'm still figuring out how they actually fit into the game. A lot of it feels like it's geared toward players who are already established, so I'm curious if any returning players feel the same way. It's nice to see they're adding stuff, but I'm taking it slow for now. Let me know if you've tried any of these and think they're worth focusing on. You know, grinding in KalOnline really has me thinking about the anime kingdom. If you haven't seen it, it's an absolute banger. It's set during China's Warring States period, and it follows this kid named Xin, who starts out as a servant but dreams of becoming one of the greatest generals in history. The whole vibe of Kingdom, the chaos, the battles, the ambition, it reminds me of KalOnline's world. Like you're in this massive conflict, just one person trying to make a difference. And whether it's in the anime or the game, the grind to grow stronger and carve out your place is real. Here's the deal with Kingdom. It kicks off with Xin and his best mate, Piao, both orphans dreaming big about becoming legendary warriors. They practice every day, imagining themselves leading armies and changing the world. Then one day, Piao gets picked up by some noble for a secret mission and leaves Xin behind. It's brutal for Xin, but he keeps grinding like he always does. Next thing you know, Piao shows up again, dying. He'd been working as a body double for this young king named Zheng, who's basically on the run because his enemies want him dead. Piao's last wish? He tells Xin to help King Zheng survive and reclaim his throne. From there, Xin and Zheng team up, and it's this crazy journey of trust, betrayal, and ambition. Zheng wants to unify all of China, and Xin wants to rise through the military ranks and prove he's more than just some kid from nowhere. They're both nobodies trying to take on the world, and it's wild watching them fight through impossible odds. What hits me is how much Kingdom nails the grind. Xin starts with nothing. He's barely got a sword and some skills, but he never gives up. He keeps learning, fighting, and figuring things out. KalOnline has that same feel. You start with trash gear, no real direction, and you're just grinding away, hoping to make a name for yourself. The battles in Kingdom also remind me of KalOnline's chaotic energy. Massive armies, intricate strategies, and that feeling that one wrong move could screw everything up. Whether you're summoning ghosts in the game or leading troops in the anime, there's this pressure to be smarter, faster, and better. If you're into KalOnline's vibe, I honestly think you'd love Kingdom. It's not just about fighting, it's about rising up, leading people, and figuring out how to survive in a brutal world. The characters grow so much, especially Xian, and you really get attached to them. Plus, it's based on actual history, so you're getting epic storytelling with a side of real-world context. And look, I know the animation in the first season got some hate because of the CGI, but trust me, the story is so strong it doesn't even matter. Later seasons clean it up, so if you can stick with it, you'll be hooked. It's like KalOnline in that way, maybe rough around the edges, but if you give it time, it pulls you in. Grinding here in KalOnline kind of feels like Xian's journey. It's slow, sometimes frustrating, but you know there's something bigger waiting at the end if you just keep going. That's what makes it worth it. Whether it's in the game or in Kingdom, you're fighting to make your mark in a chaotic world. Speaking of similar games, have you all tried Black Desert Online? If you've spent time grinding in KalOnline, you'd probably feel right at home in BDO, but it's a different beast entirely. It takes the idea of an MMORPG grind and cranks it up to 11, with a world that feels alive in ways KalOnline could only hint at. The first thing you'll notice in BDO is the combat. It's fast, fluid, and ridiculously satisfying. Unlike KalOnline's slower, methodical pace, BDO is all about combos and timing. You've got complete control over your character's movements, which means fights feel dynamic and skill-based. You're not just sitting back and hitting auto-attack, you're actively dodging, weaving, and chaining abilities together. It's a learning curve for sure, but once it clicks, it's hard to go back to the old-school combat style. But let's talk about the grind, because that's where KalOnline veterans will feel the connection. Like Kal, BDO is unapologetic about making you work for progress. Whether you're farming mobs, fishing, gathering, or even chopping wood, everything you do feeds into this bigger picture. In Kal, grinding mobs feels like the main path to growth, but in BDO the grind is layers. You're not just leveling up your character, you're managing your gear, building your worker empire, and unlocking new parts of the world. It's overwhelming at first, but if you're the kind of player who enjoys having endless options, it's addicting. One thing that really stands out in BDO is the world itself. KalOnline's world is steeped in mythology, and it has this nostalgic charm, but it's more static. BDO, on the other hand, feels like it's alive. NPCs have daily routines, weather patterns change, and the cities feel bustling and real. You can get lost just wandering around and exploring, and that's before you even touch the quest lines or dungeons. It's the kind of immersive world that makes you feel like a small part of something huge, which is exactly the vibe KalOnline tries to create with its faction wars and massive battles. Now, where things start to diverge is PvP. KalOnline has structured PvP, faction battles, sieges, that kind of thing. It's all about strategy and group play. BDO, though, it's chaotic. Once you hit level 50, open-world PvP is a thing, and anyone can attack you, or vice versa. It's a double-edged sword because while it keeps you on your toes, it can also get frustrating if you're just trying to grind in peace, and someone decides to mess with you. That said, BDO's large-scale PvP events, like node wars and castle sieges, are where the game really shines. It's a lot like Kal in that way. You've got these huge battles where teamwork, strategy, and coordination make all the difference. Another area where BDO takes things to another level is its progression system. In KalOnline, you're grinding levels and farming gear, and that's pretty much the core of it. BDO has all that, but it also has this insane RNG gear enhancement system. It's brutal, honestly. You could spend hours grinding for materials, only to watch your gear fail to upgrade and lose durability. It's a love it or hate it system, but for people who thrive on the grind, it adds this high-stakes element that keeps you coming back. It's not for the faint of heart, though. Kal's straightforward approach might actually feel less stressful in comparison. For the solo players out there, BDO offers a lot more flexibility. You can grind mobs solo for hours, do life skills like cooking and trading, or even go full-on AFK with activities like fishing. KalOnline, by contrast, feels more group-oriented, especially when it comes to high-level grinding and PvP events. But if you miss that community feel, BDO's guild system is where you'll find it. Guilds are a big deal in BDO, especially if you're into PvP, and they add a layer of camaraderie that can make the grind a lot more enjoyable. The thing is, BDO and KalOnline feel like two sides of the same coin. Kal has that nostalgic old-school charm, simple mechanics, a slower pace, and a tight-knit community. BDO, on the other hand, is the modern, polished version, flashier, faster, and a lot more overwhelming in terms of content. If you're someone who loved KalOnline but wished for a more immersive and action-packed experience, BDO might be worth a shot. Just be ready to dive into a game that doesn't hold your hand. Like Kal, it rewards patience and persistence, but it demands a lot more of your attention. So yeah, if KalOnline is the quiet, meditative grind, BDO is the adrenaline-fueled sprint. Both have their place, and honestly, I can't help but think about how much the two games reflect different eras of MMORPGs. Kal is like that trusted old friend you always come back to, while BDO is the flashy new rival that pushes you to up your game. Speaking of similar games, have you all tried the Dynasty Warriors series? It's one of those iconic franchises that has been around forever, and for good reason. If you're into hack-and-slash games where you get to absolutely wreck hundreds of enemies in massive, chaotic battles, then Dynasty Warriors is a must-play. It's based on the famous romance of the Three Kingdoms, a historical epic about the warlords and kingdoms vying for control of ancient China. It's not just about fighting, though. It's about strategy, drama, and the rise and fall of legendary figures like Cao Cao, Liu Bei, and Sun Quan. Now here's the exciting part. A new Dynasty Warriors game is on the way, and it's called Dynasty Warriors Origins. It's coming out on January 17, 2025, for PlayStation 5, Xbox Series X, S, and PC. If you're like me and grew up on these games, this is huge news. The developers are taking it back to the series' roots, which means we're getting the classic 1 versus 1,000 combat style that made Dynasty Warriors famous. There's nothing quite like charging into a battlefield and mowing down entire armies while feeling like an absolute powerhouse. What we know about Dynasty Warriors Origins. The game promises a fresh perspective by introducing a nameless hero as the main character. Instead of focusing solely on the iconic warlords and generals, you'll get to experience the chaos of the Three Kingdoms era through the eyes of someone trying to carve out their own place in history. It's a cool idea because it opens the door for a more personal story while still keeping that larger-than-life, epic battlefield vibe that Dynasty Warriors is known for. From what I've seen, the gameplay stays true to the series. You're still unleashing insane combos, launching enemies into the air, and wiping out entire waves of soldiers in a single move. But they've also added some modern touches to keep things fresh. The environments look more dynamic, and the AI seems smarter, meaning battles might feel a bit more strategic this time around. It's like they're blending the nostalgia of the older games with just enough new mechanics to keep it interesting. The demo, Battle of Sisui Gate. If you're curious about how it plays, there's a demo available right now on Steam. It lets you jump into the Battle of Sisui Gate, one of the iconic early battles in the Three Kingdoms timeline. It's the perfect way to get a feel for the new combat mechanics and see how the game handles those massive, over-the-top battles. I gave the demo a spin, and honestly, it's everything I hoped for. The combat feels fluid, the visuals are crisp, and the chaos on the battlefield is just as intense as I remember. The new hero character adds a different vibe, too. It's not just about being a general commanding troops, but about fighting tooth and nail to survive and rise in the ranks. If you've ever wanted to experience Dynasty Warriors from the perspective of someone working their way up, this game nails it. Why Dynasty Warriors still holds up. For those of you who might not have played a Dynasty Warriors game before, let me break it down. The series is all about power fantasy. You're one person, but on the battlefield, you feel like a god. It's not about realism, it's about spectacle. You're pulling off crazy moves, toppling enemy officers, and turning the tide of entire wars on your own. What keeps the series interesting is how it balances the action with strategy. Sure, you're cutting through hordes of enemies, but you're also capturing bases, managing objectives, and figuring out the best way to outsmart enemy generals. It's a mix of brute force and tactical thinking that keeps every battle feeling fresh. Why this one feels special? Dynasty Warriors Origins feels like it's going back to what made the series great in the first place. Recent entries tried to mix things up, open-world elements, new mechanics, but not everyone was into that. This game seems to strip it back and focus on the core experience, massive battles, tight combat, and the thrill of dominating the battlefield. The choice to make the main character a nameless hero is also a smart move. It adds a sense of immersion. You're not just playing as a famous historical figure, but as someone who could have been part of that era. It's a fresh angle that still fits perfectly into the world of Dynasty Warriors. What's next for Dynasty Warriors? If this game delivers, and I think it will, it could mark a real comeback for the series. Dynasty Warriors has always had a loyal fanbase, but it's been a while since a new entry really captured that old magic. Origins looks like it's trying to bring back that feeling of charging into battle with your weapon in hand, ready to take on the world. So if you're a fan of KalOnline or any other game that gives you that sense of being part of something bigger, an epic war, a massive conflict, Dynasty Warriors, Origins might just hit the spot. Give the demo a try and let me know what you think. For me, it's already shaping up to be the kind of game that keeps you coming back for just one more battle.